Hello, everyone. This is Cynthia Mazzaferro with Powerful Beyond Measure, and I am so excited to bring to you another author. His name is Michael Tanner. How are you, Michael?
I'm great, Cindy. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today. Thanks so much.
I am too. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael. He has a MA in Christian leadership from Luther Rice College and Seminary, with 23 years of marriage and parenting three teenagers under their belt. Michael and his wife Jennifer have experienced the highs and lows of marriage, those we all know, those difficulties and happy times, and also the challenges of parenting in the world today. So Michael has actually personally mentored many marriages and families over the past 20 years, and he shares his education and experience with readers and listeners at michaeltanner.org in order to offer real help and hope to every family. Now, Michael's written a fabulous book, and it's actually an interactive book because it's a journal, and we're going to talk about that today. So, Michael,
Yes.
congratulations on your new book. It's actually in pre-order right now as we speak, and will be coming out publicly in a very short time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate that. And let me take this moment, opportunity to say congratulations to you as well. I noted just a couple of days ago that you just received a Silver Nollis Award. So
I did. Thank
congratulations to you.
you.
That's awesome.
Oh,
I'm
that's so
so
sweet of
glad
you
for
to
you.
say. Thank you, Michael. Writing is quite a passion, and we all feel as writers that our words are important to our readers. And
Yes.
why I do these interviews is because I think in supporting Morgan James authors and other authors, that this is a great way for people who know me to also see other great literary
Right.
works out there and how it might interact with their lives.
Right.
So I loved your book. And do you have a copy you can share everyone?
I do. I'm a little embarrassed. I'm going to show you the cover of my own personal copy. It's
Well,
a bit.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, well, it's a bit worn out. I mean, I use it every day, and so it's a little bit worn out. But a lot of really great notes that I've taken. Just my own personal journaling notes in here. But it goes with me everywhere.
Oh, that's nice. So let's go into this. Let's first talk
Yeah.
about, Michael, before you even wrote this book, we've all talked about, gratitude journals, why we need to write. So why don't we just start with that generically? What do you feel is the value of journaling?
Well, Cindy, for me, I'm a huge consumer of books. I love books. Through listening to audiobooks, through reading books, I probably consume 2 to 3 books a month. So it's just really important to me to consume a lot of content and just learn a lot from those books. But just for me personally, what I've noted is, I may read a book and I may read it 2 or 3 times. Maybe it's one of my favorite books that I'll read 2 or 3 times over a collection of years, but I just don't get the amount of value, or really, it doesn't spur me on to action until I actually write something about it. Now, sometimes that's just taking some notes, but if I just read a book and then put it down, I find that I just don't take a lot of action with that. And so that was one of the reasons that I personally started journaling myself, but also created this format that I think is so effective. Is because when I write it down, when I journal about it, then I tend to take action on it. But it also helps me. There's a quote, I attribute it to Michael Hyatt. I believe he probably attributes it to someone else, but the quote goes something along the lines of, "Thoughts disentangle themselves as they pass through lips and pencil tips." And for me, I know that is um, so true for me. Again, I can read a book and love the book, but until I really start either talking about it or physically writing about it, that's when it starts to register with me, and that's when I see that it starts to change my behavior. I take action on it in some way. So that's
Right.
why journaling is so important to me, and the reason I felt the need to put together a journal.
Right. Well, and I think that's a great aspect to it. And if I can just expand a little bit on it, for me, journaling is a process also that allows us to interact and to extrapolate how the information or activities that are occurring in your life day to day, moment to moment, um, how our intuition, how our self knowledge of it and understanding needs to come to bear. We need to, like you say, you're reading a book. well, reading the book today is different than reading the book 3 months from now, and you're going to
Right.
take away different tidbits, different messages, because we might have just had an argument, or we might have just had a happy time, and
Right.
so we take away different values in it. And I think for me, timing, divine timing, what happens in our life is so integral in
Hmm.
what we need to learn and glean from our experiences are. But
Right.
more important, like you said, then it allows us to take action. But until we do that understanding of what's going on and how we interpret,
Hmm.
our struggles, what we're reading, experiences, what we're lacking, allows us to then take action steps, because nothing can change in our life until we take action. So,
Totally agree. And I would say that quote that I shared with you, even the part about thoughts disentangle themselves. I catch myself so often, whatever the topic is, maybe I'm just thinking about it. Maybe I'm on a commute, I'm driving to work, or I'm doing something like that. And I'm thinking about that topic. And I feel like I've thought through it thoroughly. But when I take a pen in my hand and a piece of paper and I start writing about it, it's just incredible, the amount of clarity it brings for me, the additional thought that it brings to bear. And so, a topic that I thought, I had thought through thoroughly with a pen in hand and paper, it's just so evident how much more meaningful my thought process is. And so, again, that for me, that's why journaling is so important.
and I love that. And I love your book, because it allows us to establish a routine, a
Mhm.
consistency that then, it's like when we used to hold our own diaries back, especially girls, we had diaries, we'd
Right.
write down every little thing we did in the day. But the way your journal is set up, which I love, there's a scripture,
Hmm.
passage that you're supposed to reflect on. So instead of reading a whole book, you read
Right.
the scripture. And how is that interacting in your life? And what can you take away? What's the takeaway? What's the action steps, and how do you feel?
Right.
So let's
Right.
get into your book. Why don't you break down the different components in the journaling portion, that you do on day to day?
Okay. Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. First, I would say to you that this is meant to be a guided journal, so it's not a blank sheet of paper.
Mhm.
For me personally, though, I struggle with those because, again, when I'm just looking at a blank sheet of paper, how do I get my mind engaged and moving on a particular topic? So this helps me by guiding me each day. It's also not meant to be a long form journal where you just write for pages and pages and it takes a lot of time. It's really meant for about 5 minutes each morning and then 5 minutes each evening. And so, for me, that's very important. The morning and the evening routine is very important. One, in the morning, it just gets me off to a good start of the day. But probably my favorite part of the journal is the evening routine. And again, that's because I can look back on my day and recognize the positives of that day, and and just feel good about that day. I tend to, when I stop in the evening, it's easy for me to remember or think about all the negatives of that day. But the journal forces me to think about the positives of that day as well. And I mean, even to the point that it helps me rest. It helps me sleep at night when I can take that just 5 minutes and write down a few notes about what were the good things of that day. And so that's why the morning and the evening routine are included in the journal. And then each journal entry basically covers three main concepts. The first one is gratitude. There's lots of information out there about the importance of gratitude, and it just doesn't happen naturally for us. If we don't force ourselves to think with an attitude of gratitude, it's just not going to happen. And so, in a very short and concise way, it just asks you to list three things that you're thankful for. And so every morning, normally I will write something in the mornings that I know is maybe a meeting that's coming or something like that. Just this morning, I wrote that I was thankful that I was going to be talking with Cindy today. And so it's just, it forces you to look forward at your day and write things that you're thankful for. And then in the evening, again, it makes you look back at the day and identify things again that you're thankful for. And again, that's going to force you to think about the positive rather than the negative. The second aspect of each journal entry is some type of reflection. In the morning, I have reflections on family focused Bible verses. And then in the evening, I have reflection on family focused quotes. So from various different people, from books, maybe just statements they made in speeches, whatever it might be. But in each morning and evening, you're gonna reflect on either some wisdom from the Bible or some wisdom from a person that has written something or said something in the past. Both are focused on the family, because the real intention of this book is to get the user, their heart and their mind focused on the family for the purpose of building the lasting legacy that they desire. And then lastly, each journal entry is an affirmation. And this is just an effort to get all the negative thoughts out of our mind and fill it with positive, affirming thoughts. And so, whatever insecurities maybe you have about the coming day, or maybe insecurities that you have about something that happened in that day, then it has a section there where you're, if you will, you're guided through. Just write down some affirmations about yourself, about your life, about your day, whatever it might be. And again, that's for the purpose of getting all those negative thoughts. Our worst critics are between our ears. And so it's an effort to get that critic out of your mind and just
Um,
fill your heart and your mind with that affirmation.
That's great. And what I loved about it is it's very simple. And I like that it is focused on the family. And, for some people, for a lot of people, we have our greatest challenges with our family. We care about them. We want them to see us, respect us, love us. And we're also very judgmental. They don't spend
Right.
enough time with me. They're so argumentative. They're disrespectful,
Right.
or they don't hear me. I mean, the list can go on and on. But we become so judgmental in our family unit,
Mm-hmm.
and often from past experiences, which we still hold on to, that energy, that
Yeah.
anger that we haven't released. There's no forgiveness. So it's very important. And it's not so much what they're doing about it. It's how you can experience their relationship, even if they don't
Right.
want to have a closer relationship. How can you become tolerant to that? How can you become forgiving, compassionate? And
Right.
so it's a great way to do it. And I really love the way you talk about these simple ways to do it. The other thing about reflection, it's not just reflection on the scriptural passage plus the quote. For me, it was more, especially at nighttime, was reflecting more on how did I achieve my results over the day?
Right.
How was I, because again, that's, I think, giving us the pat on the shoulder that, hey, we weren't perfect, but we really did. We reflected on that spiritual passage, kind of set us
Yeah.
for the right tone, and we were able to be more tolerant. We were able
Right.
to be more forgiving and compassionate and loving. So I think it's important for us to also reflect on our own and what we did wrong too, so that
So
we can set
right.
another affirmation of improving that.
Right. So true. And I didn't mention, but it is, I believe, an important part of each journal entry. The very bottom of each journal entry, it's just free form, your personal notes. And so while I try in the middle of the form there, I try to kind of focus on what is that Bible verse telling me, or what is that quote? How does that quote apply to me, and so forth. But then in the bottom, in the personal notes section, I do exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes I just write a lot of statements around some of the things that man, I wish I could have done differently that day, or sometimes it's affirmation type things. Additional affirmations that I need, or whatever it might be. I've even, to the point, taken that opportunity to jot down to-do lists for that day, or some things that I know I want to do or accomplish, or things like that. So it does have that free form capability for you as well, to really get personal about your journal. And that's really my intention as well, is for this to be a personal journal. It's not a diary like you were talking about earlier so much, but it is intended for you to be very open, very honest, and very transparent in your writing, for the purpose of making it very, very personal. And that way, you know that the actions you're taking in your life are very meaningful actions as well.
Right. And I love that, when we write, it's a vehicle to release
Mm,
um, toxic energy, which is really bad emotional stress that we keep within us. So
right,
writing is a beautiful form of that. And there's no judgment. There's no ungrading your journal. So it's
right,
like you said, when you start to write out, one sentence, but before you know it, we're three or four. And
right.
it's more true and authentic,
Mhm.
because not your mind creating the sentence. It's more guttural, intuitive. in
Yes.
what you're releasing. So it's very
Yeah.
important.
Yes. Yeah, definitely so.
So I'm going to ask you, we're going to play a little game here if you can.
Sure.
Um, since you have the book in front of you and I don't have it because it's not quite out there in the public world.
Hmm.
But can you just take your book
Hmm.
and close it and then just open to a page?
Okay.
Let's see how the spirit brings us.
All
Just
right.
kind of cut the book somewhere in there. And
Okay.
if you could go ahead and read us that passage, the
All
scriptural
right.
passage, and let's just take the audience through it real quickly of how you might respond to those three things, if you don't mind. And
Sure.
then we can allow whoever's watching to actually take this scriptural passage
Right.
and write down on your piece of paper how it's reflecting for you too. And then this just gives you a little mock-up of what this journal would be for, what you'd be using it for on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure, sure. Be glad to do that. So yeah, I just flipped it open and happened to flip open to page 110. It's blank for me. I haven't gotten that deep into the book yet, in this particular book yet. But at the top, I just write the date, whatever the date is. I would write the date, and then the first thing I would do is in here I would write a few things that I'm thankful for. And so again, this morning I wrote that I was thankful that I was going to be speaking with Cindy in an interview this morning. Also, I have a picnic this afternoon with a lot of families and friends. So I wrote that on there that have some time um, to spend with some friends on a picnic this afternoon. And then after that, we have to take our one of our sons to meet some friends for a movie theater at the movie theater. So my wife and I are going to have about 2 hours that we just get to spend together. And so I wrote that I'm, in our busy life, I'm thankful that I'll get to spend that time together. So that was
You
what
have
I
a
wrote
date
this
night.
morning.
You have a date night.
Essentially, yes, we
You can
definitely do.
actually go see your own movie.
Exactly. And then, so on this particular verse for this morning would have been Proverbs chapter 9, verses 18 and 19. It says this: Discipline your son, for there is hope. Do not set your heart on putting him to death. A man of great wrath will pay the penalty, or if you deliver him, you will only have it to do again. And so I would read through that, and especially as since it's talking about son or it's talking about our children, I would definitely reflect on my role as a parent through that. And and I don't know, I would certainly write something about it because it talks about a man of great wrath will pay the penalty and things like that. And I would be writing things about I need to make sure that I'm being patient with my children, that I'm not allowing my anger to work its way into my discipline and just things like that, that I would need to keep in my own life in check, my anger and my wrath and my impatience, maybe my frustration, those kind of things. So I'd
But
be
also
taking some
wants
notes
you
like
to
that.
also discipline him.
Oh,
But that
absolutely.
doesn't mean angrily. Discipline is teaching him to be independent, to be
Yes.
compassionate, to be respectful, to be responsible. We are not going to always be their parents. Yes, we are, but eventually they leave the nest and we need to let them stand on their own.
Right.
So that would be something like, depending where your child is, it could be a 5-year-old child. Well,
Sure.
maybe there's in the no, no, no stage, and
Right.
everything no, and so that you still need discipline there. But you
Right.
might also have a 17-year-old who's combative, doesn't want to
Yes.
tell you about their day. Um, you know, your communications deteriorate. So you can
Right.
see how this journal, wherever you are in your life, can be very reflective and important.
Yeah, so that's so important. I mean, because you said something earlier that reminded me of this, and we can't control how other people respond, even our own family, right? You just mentioned it, and it is a problem I think that plagues all of us, especially with teenagers. Of they just don't want to talk with us, right? They get to the point they feel like us as their parent is the village idiot, and it just that they're not interested to talk to us, and I can't change that about them. But what I can do is I can change my own self. I can change my own heart and my own mind, my own attitude towards them. I can change my patience towards them, and I can show them love in a way that is patient, that is kind, that is gentle, and that's the kind of love and family relationship that will foster them opening up to me. If I don't do those things, it certainly isn't going to help them open up to me.
Right.
And
So a
so
good
those are the only
example.
things I can change.
Yeah, exactly. And this is really important. We have to take our power back. How can we, and that's what my book is about,
Hmm.
learning
Hmm.
our greatness. And when we see our greatness, we can see greatness in others. So, just like following up with that, you have the adolescent who's
Right.
kind of not communicative. Um, and you would like to have this conversation, verbal, but conversations can be had in many ways.
Right.
If your child is sitting down watching a show with you at night, he's conversing with you silently. He's
Sure.
still in your presence. He's not in his room isolating. So
Right.
maybe saying something verbally, it means so much just to have you near and part of the family. I want you to know I
Yeah.
love you so much. You didn't ask him to say anything about what happened in the
Right.
day and just say, I just love spending this time together.
No,
It
I
just
totally
makes
agree.
it's just a nice way to communicate. We can communicate many different forms, not just verbally.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I'd add to it and say that making statements like that to our spouse, to our children, again, it doesn't just come naturally. Um,
Right.
and so we've got to be intentional to do those things. And that's one of the reasons, well, honestly, I've seen in the past that kind of time management tactics or things like that for me, they just don't work. Maybe I put on my calendar and say, well, I'm going to spend 30 minutes with my daughter. Well, I might do that, but uh, it's not a real meaningful 30 minutes that I spend with them because it's kind of forced by my calendar and I haven't given a lot of, personal thought to that time with her and that type of thing. But when I spend on a daily basis just 5 or 10 minutes, and I think about with a grateful attitude how much I appreciate her, and the things I enjoy about her, and you know that just few minutes that I might have with them, then sitting in front of the television or whatever, that then spurs me to make the comments like you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise, I probably wouldn't have made it. If it had just been time on my calendar, I probably wouldn't have made those meaningful comments to my daughter. But when I have this in front of me on a daily basis, and it's focusing my heart and my mind on her and my gratitude for her and so forth, those spare little moments that I have with her are going to be very meaningful moments because I am going to be intentional about saying the things like you just mentioned.
And a lot of it's just being present, because when you're present, not like you say, scheduled for the half an hour, when you're
Right.
present in all your life, even with your own self, you can sense and you can be present to understand, boy, I'm feeling frustrated or I'm feeling really pressurized here to do something, or when you're observing
Right.
your adolescent and you can see
Yes.
there's frowns, they're making frowns and
Hmm.
they really closed off and angry, or maybe they're red in the face, realizing, saying something like, I you can be present to observe that and say,
Yeah.
it looks like you're really struggling with something. I just want you to know I'm here and love you if you want to share. It doesn't mean you're asking for that. You're just
Right.
allowing them to see you're picking up on it, not judging them. And
Right.
we all struggle. And also, to me, the greatest gift we can give anyone, including yourself, is the gift of empowerment. So to
Hmm.
even say to your child, I know you can work yourself through this. If
Yeah.
you need someone to, bounce something off, I'm here, but you're a strong person. I know who you are,
Right.
and I've struggled in my life, and to,
Yeah.
be compassionate that way.
Right.
But the greatest gift is it's not your job to solve their problems. It's
Mm.
your job to empower them to realize they
Yeah.
can solve their problems.
Yeah. That's a very good way to put it, of just being present. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I'll say just being present with your family, it doesn't just happen naturally.
Right.
What creates that in you, that ability to be present, is on an ongoing basis doing things like thinking about gratitude and thinking reflection and affirmations and doing those kind of things. That's what creates, and that's why I say it focuses your heart and your mind on being present with your family. So that's a
Right.
very good way to put it.
Great. Great. And so then we're going into the journal.
Yeah. So the next step after reflecting on that verse would be affirmations, and I have one that I write every day, no matter what, and that is, and the affirmation just starts with "I am," right, and I will always complete that with "I am an engaged husband and father." And that's important to me because I see so many men, especially on their career paths and so forth, that will disengage with their family. They feel like that, okay, they're providing for their family, maybe financially or whatever, protecting their family in some way, but outside of that, they're disengaged from their family. And so, one, it's important for me to remain engaged with my family, and so that's just an affirmation that I write every single time. I start with that one, and it's going to be about being engaged with my family. And then the next, I usually write about two or three, and then the next ones will be just some insecurities that maybe I'm having, and I need to affirm myself to again to rid my mind of whatever those insecurities are that day. So it may be that I'm facing that day. Maybe there's a really big business meeting that I'm a little anxious about because I know that it's going to be contentious or it's bad news or something like that. And so I'll write some kind of affirmation about, you know, I have the knowledge and I have the drive to go to this meeting and present well and so forth. So it'll be some affirmations associated with what are some insecurities that I might have in that particular day. Uh, and
Great.
then and then and lastly, I'll just finish it up with some personal notes. And like I said, that can be all over the map. Sometimes it's a to-do list, and sometimes it's deeper reflection on some insecurities.
Great. So I just want to go back to affirmations because I know
Sure,
the word, but some people might be listening to this and not
sure,
understand what the word affirmation is. And I just want to clarify because it's really important when you write an affirmation, it can only be positive.
right,
It usually starts with I am, doesn't have
right,
to, but it usually does. And it's something that you don't have at the moment. So
right,
you don't want to say I'm confident if you're lacking confidence.
right.
Um, so no, I should say it this way. It's sometimes if you're already a confident person, you're going into this business
Mhm,
meeting, saying
mhm,
I'm confident is not really what you're worried about. Maybe
right,
your outcome of the meeting is what you're worried about. So
right,
I am confident that the outcome of the meeting is will be beneficial to myself and those
right,
around me.
right.
Something like that. It's always good to put um, the effect on others, not being so self-serving. It's only
Mm,
affecting you positively.
right, right.
Always looking for the extra person it helps is
Yes,
always going to help you optimize and energize the affirmation to not be so self-serving. The
right.
other thing is you don't want to use any negative words. Never use the word no, any
Yes,
pain words. I'm pain free.
right,
That's a negative word, even though it's pain free.
right.
I'm healthy and vivacious and feeling alive and ready to take on the world is
Mhm,
different than I'm pain free for the next 6 hours.
right, right.
Um, so if you want to learn more about affirmations, there's a lot out there, but
Mm,
really important to, and I find this a lot when I'm with my clients. I'll say, well, what's
mhm,
your affirmation? And they'll say, and
right.
they'll tell me their quote. And I say, well, so you don't feel that way now?
Yeah,
And it's talking negative about themselves because they say, I'm not a loving wife. I'm saying, so you
right,
don't love your husband, your husband right now? Well, yeah, of course I do. So why would that be an affirmation?
right.
So being careful how we write it is really important because you're actually sending this energy out to the universe
Mm,
and it's going to trying to come back at you. So I
yeah.
do encourage people to be careful on what they write.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I completely agree. I mean, you want to keep it all positive, very much positive. And there's an aspect of an affirmation too that I think is very important, and that is that it's true. But sometimes that it doesn't occur to us. We don't recognize or connect the dots that that statement I just wrote that is an affirmation. It's positive, but it's also true. So, for instance, I would not write an affirmation that says, I am a millionaire because I'm not. Now, I may write an affirmation somewhere along the lines of, I have the skills and I have the plan to one day become a millionaire. And so it would be true. But what I would say is, as you write, you're going to connect the dot with truths that otherwise you wouldn't have recognized those to be true. I'll give you a for instance. Uh, I have a number of public speaking engagements, and I always get nervous about them. In general, I'm not afraid people are going to throw tomatoes at me or anything like that. It's just, it's just some nervousness about standing in front of a bunch of people and things like that. And so, because of that insecurity, I will write affirmations that day related to the content that I want to share and the positive impact that it will have on those individuals. So much to what you were saying writing that affirmation and the effects that it can have on others. And so I will write some affirming statements about. I have a lot of great content that I'm going to share, and it's going to improve their marriage, for instance. So it'll be, some affirmation like that. And oftentimes what that does is that takes that nervousness of standing in front of a crowd to speak. It takes it away because it's affirming to me, and it also connects me with my purpose in doing that thing.
Right, exactly. And I think what you're trying to also say is it has to be believable. Like you can't say,
Yes.
I'm going to fly to the moon because that's always
Right.
what I wanted to do. Well, flying to the moon really isn't maybe applicable or
Right.
realistic. So
Right.
having that believable, or as you called the truth, you have to believe it. And that's why so many times vision boards and affirmations don't work, because
Right.
we don't believe what we're writing.
Right.
So you want to make sure these affirmations are things that are going to support you, to
Yes.
kind of be your own cheerleader, that yes, you can stand and be strong and confident, or compassionate or forgiving, or,
Right.
whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
Hmm. Hmm.
So sorry we had to divert a little bit there,
Oh,
because
no, no
I
worries.
think it's so important, because it does help you to strengthen your
Yeah.
convictions, what
Yeah.
it is that you're trying to aspire to achieve.
Right. Yeah. And no, I really appreciate you bringing some clarity to that, because, like you said, not everyone recognizes those words and what they really mean and so forth. And for that reason, the opening of the book, it basically describes how this works for you, why this works for you, and so even in the topic of affirmation, I've got some statements in there and some research and references, both from the Bible but also from science about, well, why does affirmation, what does it do to your mind and to your actions and your attitude and so forth? But then why does it work also?
Hmm.
And so there's lots of reference material there that certainly gives the reader, um, the understanding of why these aspects of the journal are important and how they work for you.
Great, 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 great. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about your book? And what is the biggest goal that you'd like your readers to take away from your book?
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, again, the title is the Family Legacy Journal, and so kind of the audience is those people, those individuals, spouses, parents, those that have family that you really want to leave some type of lasting legacy with your family. You want to have relationships inside of your family that build connection, that will leave a lasting legacy. I lost my father about 6 years ago. I lost my grandfather about 15 years ago. Both men were just incredible rocks in my life. I mean, just solid foundations in my life. And to this day, even years after their passing, um, I know the legacy they've left in me. I know, when I face a situation, I don't really have to wonder and ask myself, I wonder what dad would feel about this. I know how he would feel about that situation because we had that relationship and because he left that lasting legacy on me. Even my grandfather that I lost 15 years ago, again, it's been 15 years, but even today, it hits me at times, and I know how he would feel about it. I know what he might say about a situation or the things that he would do. I know the principles that he would live by. And again, it's because he and I had such a wonderful relationship that he left that lasting legacy on me. And so I would say, the book is for those that want to leave a similar legacy on in their marriage relationship with their spouse, leave a similar legacy with their children, and it's going to do that for you. And it's going to do that for you by building those close relationships. If I had just rarely spoken with my dad, I wouldn't have that legacy that I know today. But because we had a good, close relationship, and because, as we were talking about earlier, in those moments of life that he said important things to me, um, then I have that legacy. And so I would just encourage folks, one, make sure you want to leave that type of legacy in your family, and then take action on that. And I believe this journal, the practice of journal is probably the best way to focus your mind and focus your heart on leaving those lasting legacies with your family. So I'd encourage you to get the book for that reason.
That sounds really great. I'm going to bring up a little devil's advocate here, because I have to also try to appeal to the audience that doesn't
Sure.
have family.
Sure.
that has a broken family, that have
Mm,
parents that were maybe drug addicts or alcoholics, that
sure.
had abuse of some form, and they don't have that
Mm,
legacy or that more
yeah.
normal parenting type
Yeah.
life, and maybe they now are alone. They don't
Yeah.
have children, never had children. Their child's predeceased them.
Right.
um, for me, my children are grown and left the house, so they're not in my home.
Yeah.
We converse a couple times a week, so it's not that daily attention. My husband and I, we are still together,
Mhm.
37 years. But what I would like to encourage, and maybe you could just speak on this too,
Sure.
for me, family, as most people realize, is the traditional family, and that you have close community that
Right.
live in the house, or very close relative is what we tend to think of.
Right.
But for those that don't have that, I'd
Mm,
like you to at least explore the option of creating new family dynamics,
yeah.
meaning new relationships. It could be a professional family, it could be social families, and that even if you have distant family that you haven't
Mhm.
spoken to your father for 10 years or 20
Right.
years, you left angry with each other,
Right.
that this journal can still be beneficial to you,
Mhm.
because it helps you really. What I love about the journal, even though it's tied to the family unit and increasing that legacy opportunity,
Mhm.
um, that I think it can be used in all aspect of life. And I just don't want you to feel like if you don't
Yeah.
have a family that you
Right.
can't benefit from this book. Would you agree, Michael?
Oh, totally agree, and I so appreciate you asking that question, Cindy, because, yeah, I mean, when I mention the word family, most people think of a husband and wife married and they have children, but I do use the word in a broader sense as well. So I'll give you for example, um, uh, my wife and I attend a local church, and we call that group of people our
Right.
church family. And we put the descriptor on their church, but we call them our church family. And so it's all about the relationship with those people that makes them family. And so, yeah, I mean, depending on what your life situation is, it may be that you're estranged from a blood relationship that makes a person a family, or it may be that you're isolated in the way that friends are your
Your
family.
best friends, right?
Right, and so yeah, I believe it's important, or it can certainly positively impact you in those relationships as well, because again, it's changing your own behavior related to a relationship with other people. I can also give you another example. So I just spoke about my dad that I lost about 6 years ago. That's actually my stepdad. Now, because of the relationship I had with him, I call him my dad. My biological father, he and I have been estranged for years. He is still to this day an alcoholic. And so, in many areas of my life, especially as a child, I felt abandoned by him. I
Hmm.
felt as if he chose alcohol over me, for instance. But it wasn't until I started doing things related to gratitude and reflection and affirmation and writing those things down that I was able to then reach out to him and begin to rebuild that relationship with him. So I don't remember when I wrote this, but it was some time back. But one of the things that I was grateful for is that I wrote that I was grateful for the lessons I learned in seeing him struggle with alcoholism. And so I was able to actually be thankful for the difficulties that I experienced as a teenager and things like that. But because I'm doing these things in this journal, because it's changing my heart and my mind to desire a deeper relationship with uh, my biological father, then it spurs me on to take action. And so we probably have a better relationship now than we've had since I was probably 12 to 14 years old.
Right.
And I'm so thankful for that. But that would not have happened if I wasn't taking these kind of actions on a personal level of gratitude and reflection and affirmation.
It's so funny because your story is very similar to mine, not the alcoholic part, but about abandonment. And
Right.
thank you for sharing your personal story.
Sure.
But for those that know me, my father left five daughters. I was 7 years old, from 9 years to 9 months old. And for me, it was about how could a man supposedly love
Right.
all of us walk out of our
Yeah.
life never to be seen.
Yes.
And my stepfather, many years later, after I was an adult woman, actually, after he had died, came through in spirit with a medium on stage. And the very first words out of his mouth is that you're perfect just the way you are and
Mm.
not to change for anyone. Because I was trying to change. My husband and I were having troubles then.
Right. Right.
And here the words I had been waiting for my biological father to say all my life was that you're this apple of my eye, you're such a
Mm.
wonderful daughter, blah, 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 all these wonderful verbal comments, never to be heard. I
Right.
hear it from spirit, which really, even though it was my stepfather, Bill, who said it, I
Right.
really now believe it was also my spiritual father that
Sure.
says to each and every one of us that we are perfect, even with our
Right.
imperfections,
Right.
and to
Right.
be authentically true to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I also have to give gratitude that I was glad my father left me. I never could have said that when I was going through it, because if
Understand.
he
Yeah.
had stayed, he was a strong militant man, and
Mm.
he would have squashed me looking like a little fly. Would never been able to rise up and be
Right.
empowered and to be
Right.
able to write my book,
Right.
Powerful
Right.
Beyond Measure, because
Right.
that's the spiritual lesson, the growth that we're all here to spiritually learn and
Mhm.
evolve into.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I love that we both share similar stories, but very different. But it gets us to the same place.
Yeah, I recall reading that part of your book as well, and it just so resonated with me because, again, kind of the same story, um, but definitely the same feelings,
Yeah.
that we both share. Um,
Yeah. So I encourage you, no matter what kind of families you have,
yes.
now or in the past, that it is a part of self healing that occurs in this journaling.
Right.
And so I encourage you all to go out and get Michael Tanner's book here, and you can pre order it. And I think you have a special offer you're going to be giving everyone too.
I do, Cindy. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. As you said, on all the online retailers, it's on pre-order. The official publication date is October the 16th, but you can pre-order it today on Amazon or any of the other online retailers. You can purchase a copy as well today directly from me at michaeltanner.org. But what I really wanted to offer your audience today, Cindy, was just a special preview of that they can get for free. And so I'm going to put together a page on my website, and you can get to that at michaeltanner.org/Cindy. And I'll put that together, and it'll give you I think it's about a 7-day preview of the journal that you can download that for free and get your copy of that. Go ahead and start your journaling. And then when you see the impact that it has on your relationship and on your life, then you can order your own copy of the journal as well. So I'll put that together and encourage your audience to check that out.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And thank you. That's a wonderful offer. And it gives everyone an opportunity to try it and to realize it's very easy,
Sure,
doable, and will give you results.
sure,
And as you all know, without change, nothing will change in your life. So
right.
the understanding that you're watching this for a reason, and hopefully it resonates with you and you're willing to step into that change.
Yes, yes. Cindy,
Great.
thank you so much again for this time and sharing the journal and my information with your audience. And just again, as I wrote this morning in my journal, I have such gratitude for this opportunity with you.
Well, thank you, and I am very grateful as well for this opportunity to share your beautiful resource as a tool to help change lives. So thank you all for being here. I so appreciate your time. Much love to you all. And remember, you are powerful beyond measure. Take care.